This is the Sports Bash Warm-Up with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Josh Hennig.
The organizational structure and their ability to keep funneling in good young talent around the quarterback, both on offense and defense, as you lose veterans and replenish, which is what the Eagles are trying to do right now.
That was Jeff Moser yesterday on Football at 4 on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig here on the warm-up. Text board is open at 609-403-0973. We got some football to talk about today. Now the dust has settled from Cam Newton signing with the Patriots. What does that mean? Still questions about sports returning to play. We have questions about the Eagles, about Doug Pederson. We got a lot to get to this hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Kilgore, national sports reporter and columnist for the Washington Post, will join us coming up at 1:25. We get all of that right here on 97.3 ESPN. Plus, your text messages at 609-403-0973. And I wanted to play for you some of what Jeff Mosher said yesterday, not just because the guys talked about Cam Newton, but because I stumbled across Twitter. And anytime you stumble across things on Twitter, it's always a bit of a dangerous experience. It's always a bit of an experimentation that could go sideways quickly for any of us. And I happen on this list of head coaches. And a guy from CBS Sports, and he doesn't need any promotion or name recognition, but a guy decided to make a list of head coaches in the NFL. And I'm not fully sure what prompted this individual to go out of his way to say or do this, but he came out and said that, oh yeah, by the way, Doug Pederson is behind Sean McVay. And he went on to criticize all the Eagle fans who called him out on this take. And I find it ironic that people still go out of their way to criticize Eagle fans, criticize Doug Pederson, basically speak ill of an organization that has done very well. And as Jeff Mosher put it yesterday on Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBurst.com on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the Eagles have worked to replenish this roster every year. They're constantly trying to upgrade the team. They're constantly trying to better the team. And part of the reason why you can better the team is because you know that no matter who you put out there, as Dan Graziano said on Get Up on ESPN, Doug Pederson will bring out the best in the Eagles.
You have to respect what Doug Pederson has done the last 2 years in terms of lugging that Eagles team into the playoffs when all appeared lost. So you can't rule that out.
Lugging, he says. Dragging them in. Willing them in to the postseason. That's what Doug Pederson has done. I get it. Sean McVay, he's a good-looking dude. He's got a strong beard. Very, very, fancy style. Doug Pederson isn't the best orator at the podium. He says, and He's not as fluid with his verbiage. But people still want to pile on this guy. And I think it's hilarious that even after the Eagles have gotten to the playoffs 3 straight years, that there's still questions with the coach. I have fewer questions with the coach than I do with the roster given to the coach each year. Listen, Sean McVay has arguably the best defensive player in the NFL. He has one of the best wide receiver units in the NFL for the last couple of years. And they had one of the best defensive coordinators in the league in Wade Phillips until they got rid of him. So what exactly does Sean McVay have that Doug Pederson doesn't? And to even emphasize more what Doug Pederson has done, as Jeff Mosher puts it, Carson Wentz is part of the reason why you have this window open for the Super Bowl, but you have to put talent around him to actually get back to a Super Bowl.
You've got Carson Wentz here, so the window is open as long as he's playing well. But as you saw last year, if he's surrounded, well, actually in December he was surrounded by lesser talent at wide receiver and did better. But you've got to have a good organization, a good draft. You have to have your young talent produce because guys get costly and you have to let guys walk and make tough decisions. So the guys you draft have to play well.
Doug Pederson has found a way, despite the talent given to him, whether it's because of injuries, whether it's because of anything. I don't think we can overlook the fact that the Eagles would not be in the position they are in right now if it wasn't for Doug Pederson. But yet you still have people that want to go out there and basically, tear down what is happening here. Tear down what has been given. And by the way, this list of coaches, look, I don't hate the list. Belichick 1, Reed 2, Harbaugh 3, Peyton 4, Kyle Shanahan 5. I mean, the only one I give a bit of a shrug to is, no offense to Peyton and no offense to Harbaugh, but they won their Super Bowls 7+ years ago. At least Kyle Shanahan, as a coordinator and now as a head coach, has been to a couple Super Bowls. I get why he's high on the list. But then to have McVay at 6, Tomlin at 7, Pete Carroll at 8, Doug Pederson at 9, and Mike Zimmer at 10. And part of the reasoning why Doug is not as high on this list is because they claim they don't want to count rings. Well, what's more important then? I thought the point of playing football was to win a championship. You want to factor in what, aside from winning a championship? You can win all the regular season games you want. It doesn't make you a better head coach. Listen, I had Mike Clay on a couple weeks ago. You can go check out the conversation at 973ESPN.com. We talked about the fact that Doug Pederson is among the best in the NFL in offensive snaps per game. Not Sean McVay, not Kyle Shanahan, not Sean Payton, not Andy Reid, Doug Pederson. So what you're doing is you're giving your team more and more opportunities to score, giving your team more and more opportunities to be successful. But that's not important. You know the only difference between the guys who are ahead of Pederson on this list is that they're more cool and more fun behind a microphone. Let's be realistic. John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay are all very well-spoken head coaches. Pete Carroll and Doug Pederson seem to have this stigma against both of them because of how they act, how they look. Oh, Pete Carroll's a rah-rah guy. It's a little ridiculous. Doug Pederson, he's not the most eloquent guy, and, he doesn't look like he really is, whatever the stupid stuff people say about Pederson. The fact that we're judging people based on just regular season wins and how they look and act, I think is utterly ridiculous. By the way, if you want to compare Pederson and McVay, Pederson is 31-17 since 2017. McVay is 33-15 since being hired in 2017. That's a 2-game difference. 2 games. The Rams, under the great genius that is Sean McVay, in the postseason, scored 3 points versus the Patriots. The Eagles scored 41 in the Super Bowl. In the playoffs, the Rams scored 13 points versus the Falcons. The Eagles scored 15 points. I'm supposed to take this seriously? That Sean McVay is a better coach than Doug Pederson? Oh, but there's more. In the month of December, since 2017, I think most of us agree that December is an important month in a football season. Doug Pederson's Eagles are 11-2. Meanwhile, Sean McVay's team is 9-6. So the Eagles finished the year strong, and the Rams not so much. Don't tell me there's more nuance here. I'm tired of people dissing on Pederson because he doesn't fit the mold, because he's not brash like Buddy Ryan. Let me tell you something. Buddy Ryan won 0 playoff games. He's overrated. Yeah, I said it. Buddy Ryan's overrated. The fact that Ray Rhodes has playoff wins and Buddy Ryan doesn't should tell you something. Listen, I wasn't a fan of Andy Reid for everything he did in Philadelphia. But if you don't believe he's one of the best coaches in franchise history, and he is solely responsible for the turnaround of the franchise, then you're clueless. I think Andy Reid just now, because he won a Super Bowl, is finally getting the credit that he deserves as being a head coach. Doug Pederson led a franchise that has never won a Super Bowl to a championship with a backup quarterback and a backup left tackle and a backup linebacker. But you're going to tell me that Sean McVay is better? Stop. Sean Payton has had one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And he hasn't been able to get the Saints back to the Super Bowl since. John Harbaugh has missed the playoffs more times since he reached the Super Bowl than Doug Pederson has in all 4 years as a head coach. Yeah, Doug Pederson has been in the playoffs 3 out of 4 years. 3 straight. John Harbaugh has been in search for a Lamar Jackson-level quarterback to replace Flacco for a couple of years before Lamar even came along. I don't mind some of these guys being ahead, but I'm tired of the anti-Doug Pederson sentiment. Please, if I'm wrong, let me know. 609-403-0973. I think Doug Pederson needs to be in the top 5 among NFL head coaches. This team has had tons of injuries, and they still found a way to get the playoffs. He has lost his starting quarterback not once, not twice, but in 3 different playoff games, he's had to go with a backup. And his teams are still competitive. It's not like the Eagles are getting blown out every playoff game. It's not like the Eagles are being embarrassed every playoff game. The Eagles still had a chance to beat the Seahawks with a quarterback with a torn hamstring in Josh McCown, a backup right guard, and a backup right tackle on the offensive line, a bunch of guys off the practice squad at wide receiver, your third-string tight end playing at some of the receiver spots on the offense, and you still had a chance to win the game. I'm sorry, but you're going to tell me that McVay is better. See, this is the problem. We have this idea and this image of what we want our head coach to act and look like and talk like. If Belichick didn't have rings, everybody would hate him even more because of how no nonsense he is how indifferent he is with the media. Shouldn't success be the requirement, the prerequisite for judging a head coach? The head coach's job literally is to win games, not win press conferences. The head coach's job is to get his team to the postseason so they have a chance to win. And I'm supposed to sit here and act like that doesn't matter all of a sudden? Because, as some people say, well, there's nuance. Nuance? Of this entire list of head coaches, the only head coaches on this list who have won a Super Bowl in the last 5 years on this list are Belichick, Reed, and Pederson. Not Harbaugh, not Peyton, not Kyle Shanahan, and not the so-called boy genius Sean McVay. I'm not saying McVay's a bad head coach, but when you go 9-6 in December, there's a reason why he didn't make the playoffs in 2019. When Sean McVay has a team that goes out there and scores 3 points versus the Patriots in the Super Bowl, while Doug Pederson, with a backup quarterback, gets 41, what am I supposed to think of you? Am I supposed to just throw that out the window for consideration? You scored 13 points versus the Falcons in a playoff game. You're no different than the Eagles. The Eagles put up 15. And again, with a backup quarterback. Doug Pederson, remember this stat. 11-2 in December since 2017. 11-2. You can make the argument Doug Pederson is one of the 5 best coaches at finishing a season than anybody in the NFL right now. And if that doesn't make him one of the best head coaches in the league and better than some of the guys on this list, I got to question your analysis of football. Really do. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Adam Kilgore coming up at 125. He wrote an article about Cam Newton signing with the Patriots. And as Jeff Mosher said yesterday on Football at 4 with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, I think Mosher likes the move for the same reason I do. This was Jeff Mosher on Football at 4 about Cam Newton signing with the Patriots.
It's a great low-risk, high-reward deal for the Patriots, right? As you mentioned, it's a wonder deal, not a whole lot of money for a guy that, when healthy, plays at a very high level, and when healthy is certainly better than the quarterbacks that they have on the roster now, Jarrett Stidham and I believe Brian Hoyer.
If the head coach was not Bill Belichick and if the offensive coordinator was not Josh McDaniels, how much would we still like this as a low-risk, high-reward move? Football is the one sport where head coaching matters. Football is the one sport where being a head coach and being a good one and doing your job well, in my opinion, has the greatest impact on your team. In basketball, there's only 5 dudes on the court, and anything can happen. One guy can get hot, and the game can get caught away real fast. In hockey, you can have a hot goaltender and win a championship. In baseball, remember the Arizona Diamondbacks 20 years ago? They had 2 Hall of Fame level pitchers pitching at a high level. And they had a great playoff run, and they won a World Series because of 2 dudes. The Giants had 1 dude, Madison Bumgarner. Baseball, basketball, and hockey. One guy can have a huge impact in the way that football can't. Because football, if your offensive line doesn't block and your receivers don't catch and everybody doesn't do their job, then it doesn't matter. Cam Newton is arguably one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL in terms of athleticism, arm strength, and just pure physical ability. But one of Cam's problems when he came to the NFL was one of the reasons why he was running so much was because he was not as developed as a quarterback. When he won the MVP, you started seeing more and more from him. And in 2018, before he got severely injured, he had 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a 67.9 completion percentage. You don't think Belichick and Josh McDaniels can do something with that? This is a coach that has won games with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, and Matt Castle. Brissett is a nice athlete, but not a great athlete like Cam. Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot of arm talent, but he doesn't have the power in his arm like Cam does. Matt Castle is a solid NFL quarterback, but he's not a league MVP. Cam Newton is still in his early 30s. The reports are that the Browns were the other team interested in Cam. If you would have gone to the Browns, I wouldn't feel this way. But head coaches matter. The Eagles are not the successful team that they are the last 3 years without Doug Pederson. And the reason why I like Cam to the Patriots is because of Bill Belichick. You don't think Bill Belichick, with his years of football experience, will figure out the best way to utilize Cam Newton with Josh McDaniels? The fact that it's the Patriots that end up with Cam should really scare everybody. Because the last time the Patriots picked up a cast-off that nobody else wanted, I mean, how many should we name? Corey Dillon? Randy Moss? They've done this before. They've gone out and picked up big-name offensive talents and found a way to get it done. They just haven't done it yet with a quarterback because they got Tom Brady for almost 20 years. You get one of the all-time greatest, not the greatest quarterback of all time, you don't need to go out and get quarterbacks. Now you do. Jared Stidham and Brian Hoyer may know the offense, but Cam Newton is a phenomenal talent. Head coaching matters, whether their name is Belichick or Peterson. I don't care how good you are at winning a press conference. Sean McVay. Josh Hennig here. Warm up on 97.3 ESPN. Adam Kilgore, Washington Post coming up next. Want to remind everybody it's another week for Seize the Deal. Another opportunity for you to get a great deal. And this week's deal for this Friday, starting at 9 a.m., you can get a $25 gift card for $12.50 to the Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. You could bring the kids, grab lunch with friends, come in for acoustic happy hours, or enjoy a comfortable and elevated dining experience. You can try their mahi tacos, hangover burger. I mean, here's like the name hangover burger. That sounds awesome. Bone-in chops or seared scallops with a glass of wine from their line list, or one of their signature cocktails from the Rife It Up lemonade or Mexican mule. Folks, you can get a $25 instant voucher for just $12.50. SeizeTheDeal.com this Friday for more information. Go to 97.3 ESPN mobile app for this week's information about this week's Seize the Deal opportunity with the Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. Josh Hennig back here on the warm-up on 97.3 ESPN. Get back to your text in just a bit this hour, 609-403-0973. But as promised, right now joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline, Adam Kilgore, Washington Post national sports reporter. One of the things he's been talking about the last couple of days is, like a lot of us, Cam Newton to the Patriots. And to me, I think a lot of this, it seems that Adam does too, has a lot to do with Belichick and his influence and his role in Cam Newton's potential success. Adam now joins us on the Boardwalk on the Hotlines. All guests do on 97.3 ESPN. Adam, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Josh.
I appreciate you jumping on. You know, one of the things that stands out to me with the Cam Newton to the Patriots has to do with the fact that in football, and you tell me if you agree with this or not, I think that the head football coach is probably more important than almost any other sport. And if it was any other head coach picking up Newton, I think it would be a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, I think I agree with you to an extent. I'm probably I find myself feeling like Cam Newton's, especially Cam Newton's like ceiling, is a little overlooked and sort of underappreciated. You know, when he was in 2015, I know that year is somewhat of an outlier, but still, I mean, his best season is like one of the best seasons of like our lifetimes. He was incredible that year, and he did other seasons that weren't that good, but we're close. And like on any given play, he's on a field of like elite NFL athletes, sometimes like the very best NFL athletes. So lucky I guess there because he could be healthy. He only played 2 games last year, and his third year before. So, but I know what you're saying about Belichick. It's so interesting because we've never seen Belichick with a quarterback who has the running ability and the dual threat ability of a guy like Newton. The Patriots have managed to be very innovative on offense over the years with Brady, running more shotgun than anybody did for a long time ago. Some of like the passing game was really innovative, and a lot of the way they mix personnel and formations is interesting. But that's not, it's sort of like takes a lot of work to see that. I think the things that he can do with Newton will be fascinating and sort of like thrilling to see, and really, he's gonna pull out. Go back if you're like a football nerd, go back and watch on YouTube the game when Jacoby Brissett played against the Texans when Brady was suspended in 2016 because of Deflategate, and you'll see some of like the weirdest, coolest formations and plays. It looks like it's a sort of close cousin to like what the Ravens were doing last year with just different formations, different blocking schemes, different ways to get the quarterback in space and move him around. Is really neat. I think Belichick's going to have access to a whole sort of other like dimension of offensive football because of who his quarterback is now. And hopefully, if Newton is healthy, and not going to if there's an NFL season at all, we're going to see some really interesting new stuff in the NFL. I think because of the marriage of Newton and Belichick.
And also, you mentioned Jacoby Brissett, but when you think about it, when you have a mobile quarterback, it makes up for other issues on the offense. And we know that, listen, the weapons on the Patriots last year were not exactly among the best outside of Edelman. So, maybe having a mobile, talented athlete like Cam Newton, who also is a very good quarterback, former MVP, he takes what the Patriots did with Jacoby Brissett and amplifies it tenfold because, again, you're talking about a league MVP, and it was just a couple of years ago, he had his best completion percentage in his career at 67%.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I think given the Patriots' personnel and some of what they lacked last year, Newton can cover that up because of his unique skills. Okay, so he, like the teams are going to have to play fewer guys in the box, so that might open the running game up a little bit. They're going to have to, play fewer D-backs in the field because they're going to have to account for Newton's running ability. Basically, defenses are going to have to play them 11 on 11 instead of 11 on 10, which is, how defenses can play you when you have a quarterback that you don't have to respect at all, after he hands the ball off. So, or looks like he's going to hand it off. So, yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think that, Newton makes the entire offense, offensive personnel better just because of the threats that he poses as a runner.
Adam Kilgore joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you're following him on Twitter at Adam Kilgore WP, national sports reporter for the Washington Post. In general, I know that a lot of people, tend to, hate on the Patriots, evil empire and everything. They got, penalized again for another scandal on Sunday as well. But does it seem like sometimes that people want to find more things wrong with Belichick and his success than giving him credit for what he has been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. He's like the best coach. He's the best football coach, interesting football coach of his generation, probably all time. I mean, they won. All they do is win the division and go to the AFC Championship game every year, except for last year when they lost in the first round. But yeah, no, I mean, he's the best coach there is, and it's not that close. Maybe you can throw Andy Reid in that discussion, but just between the way he manages his roster and the way he coaches technique, the way he maximizes formation and scheme, game planning. Yeah, he's definitely the best coach there is.
I was talking earlier that, another one of these lists comes out about head coach rankings, and we know Belichick's the best in the league, but then you look at some of the people on the list, John Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and I feel like half the reason those guys get ranked where they are, over people like, for example, a Doug Pederson, is because they're polished at the podium, they act and look a certain way, people think they're cool and they're fun, but yet I don't care, Adam, if you win a press conference. I need you to win football. And Belichick's a perfect example of that. He's the most gruff, apprehensive, unapologetically unfriendly person with the media probably in the last 20 years. But I want you to win football games. I don't care how good you are in the press conference.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, you get it. He's not going to, obviously, he didn't really care what people think about him, at least from like a front-facing media perspective. It is interesting about Belichick. I mean, I don't think he cares at all about like celebrity or being well liked by reporters, but there is something about him that's interesting. Like, he definitely seems to care about posterity in the way like history will judge him. He owns like and is housed at the University at the Naval Academy football facility. He has like this huge collection of football books. It's the biggest collection of football books in like a library in the world. So like, he really cares about football history, and I think he cares about his place in it. But for sure, the way he, the way he interacts with the press definitely lets you know that he's not interested in being like a lovable character or caring to like the feelings of reporters.
Adam, you mentioned a little bit ago also, before we got deeper into Belichick, about there being a football season. I know you and your colleagues, the Washington Post, like a lot of us, have been covering and talking a lot about the return of sports in general and how viable or not viable it is. And I want to touch on that a little bit with you. How do you feel about sports returning in this environment? Because I think that we all realize that, even if it is successfully pulled off, which I think some of the leagues will probably do better than others, cough, cough, baseball. But, you think about it, how likely is it for sports to be able to get back on the field, back on the court, considering that on June 30th, the environment that we're in?
Yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic when it comes to, the ability to stage sports safely. I don't think it's going to keep leagues from trying to do it safely. There's so much money at stake, and from a lot of different constituents. So I think they're going to give it a go. I would be personally, just based on conversations that I've had, reading the figures that are coming out across the country and the way the direction the virus seems to be headed now, I would be personally surprised if the baseball season finishes, if there is an NFL season that starts on time or close to it, if the NBA season is able to successfully, reach a conclusion. It's just the virus is everywhere right now, and it's not going the right direction. And I feel like, the next time we get, someone says, hey, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be about the coronavirus, that'll be the first time. So I have a hard time being really optimistic that it's going to work and work safely. I hope it does. It'd be great. It'd be great for everybody. But I don't know. It just seems like the odds are stacked against, bringing, especially in the NFL's case, bringing together like 53 to 90 guys, depending on what they do with the training camp roster size, plus all the coaches who are sometimes older. In the case of offensive linemen, sometimes heavier, which is we know is can potentially pose a greater risk. So Yeah, no, I just think there's a lot of factors that make it tough, and we still, we don't know about the virus to begin with, so it just seems, I don't blame leagues for trying. I would blame them if they went ahead in conditions that didn't seem safe, and as we're talking right now, in like a lot of parts of the country, it doesn't seem smart or safe to bring together like 100 people for a football practice. So I guess but who knows? It could be, like I said, I think the main thing still is that we just don't know. So I guess I'd be hopeful, but pretty pessimistic.
One of the things we do know is with the NBA returning, they're going to attempt, unlike baseball, as a bubble environment. And I've heard multiple NBA reporters bring this up, and I'm very conflicted on this point. I would love to hear your perspective on this. Some of them are saying that there's a view by people in the NBA that this could be the new norm, and that maybe we have to start treating people getting COVID-19 like someone getting an ankle sprain or something. Is that a strange way to handle it? I feel like that's a little uncomfortable for some people to hear.
Yeah, to me that would be a huge mistake, and sort of like a pretty significant ethical mistake. We don't know the long-term ramifications of COVID yet, especially for an athlete whose lungs are so central to what they do. We don't know. First of all, like the death rate is incredibly remote for young, healthy people. But if that's easy to say if you're not the one person in 1,000 who dies or knows someone who has a family member who gets it because you got it and they get really sick and have complications. So I think that would be kind of insane to forge ahead with the sports league and have one of the premises be, a lot of people are going to get it. We can't worry about that. I think that's the wrong way to go. I mean, it is true. I'm not saying that a lot of athletes who get it aren't going to be fine, because they are. But like I said, we don't know what the long term effects are or could be, and I don't think we want to totally minimize like the effects that it could have, even on someone who doesn't seem to be at risk, even if the chances are pretty small that it'll be really bad.
I don't want to be able to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm rephrasing this properly, Adam. I feel like one of the things that I'm hearing from you now, and I've heard from several other people, is that the bigger issue is the unknown, more so than a lot of other things, because it's the unknown of the long-term impact. It's unknown about a lot of different things. I mean, we know from state to state it's a different issue, and that's one of the issues for the NFL is how you're going to have everybody resume if every state has different rules and regulations. So, is it fair for me to pull from what you're saying that the unknown is the greatest issue with this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely fair. I would say the unknown and the fact that the things that we do kind of know, point to a lot of risk. Not necessarily a lot of like guaranteed or certain doom and bad things happening, but certainly the risk is there for a lot of dangerous and bad things to happen if you get a lot of people together who are like breathing hard on each other and sweating on each other, and coaches who are in their mid 60s and that kind of thing. So I think that's totally right. I think the biggest problem that leagues are confronting is that there's still just not a lot that we know for sure about the virus, and what we do know would suggest that it's kind of dangerous to try to play sports through it.
Adam, before I let you go, I want to ask you, I know it's not an apples to apples comparison, but what is your perspective on the success of some other sports in this environment? We know that, for example, what the UFC is doing, NASCAR, golf, other countries with their sports. Is there any, line to be drawn from those sports, or do you feel like what's going on with the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, NFL is just a completely different animal, and it's unfair to make those analogies?
Yeah, no, I think I don't know about unfair. I think you want to draw lessons where you can, but I also think that it is not quite apples to apples because of in a team sport. I think golf is unique. You're outdoors. It can be done pretty easily with minimal people around. Those players have coaches, but those coaches can stay at home, and the game can still the sport can still roll on, almost unchanged. So, yeah, in other countries, I think you can throw that out just because our country has been, handled it so poorly. So you can't compare like the conditions in the U.S. to like Japan or Korea because they were able to flatten and stomp out the curve where, the curve of the United States is headed up and is basically not that much different than what it was when everything shut down in mid-March. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't, I watch a lot of golf. I'm loving the golf. And, they've seemed to have had, done it pretty well. A few players have, tested positive for COVID and they've been sitting out and it doesn't seem like they've suffered, again, discounting with possible long-term effects. They haven't really suffered any real health, significant issues there. So that's good. I think that's promising. I think that league can probably draw hope, and if they study it closely, could draw lessons as far as like testing protocol. You had some players pull out of a tournament this past week when they were, when a family member tested positive, just out of caution, even though they themselves were positive. I think that's smart. I think that, players can look at that and understand that precaution is the way to go. But, in a team sport, that really it's a lot different for a team sports league like the NBA. It's like you're going to watch the golf tournament whether or not Webb Simpson is in it or not, even though Webb Simpson is one of the better players, and it doesn't really totally affect like the competitive calculus of that event either. Whereas if LeBron James, if he has a family member or someone close to him tests positive, and he says, I was close to this person. I should, out of caution, I'm not gonna play. Well, that rattles the entire league as far as the competitive aspect goes. So, it is a little bit different with team sports, and I think they're going to run into a lot of issues. If I think it's kind of unanswerable. Like, what happens in the NBA if 3 guys on an 8-man rotation all test positive, the day before Game 3 of a conference final? What happens then? Do you scrap the whole playoffs? Do you wait 2 weeks and see what happens? Do you make the team play with essentially their second team? So yeah, I think there's just so many complications that could and probably will come up if they go ahead. So I think certainly I'm being a real downer here, and I hope I'm wrong. I really it's certainly I want to see all the sports that can happen. It just seems like the conditions aren't that much different now than they were when everything shut down.
He is Adam Kilgore, national sports reporter for the Washington Post. Follow him on Twitter at Adam Kilgore WP. And as all guests, he appeared here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Adam, appreciate the time and your insights and your candor.
All right, man. Thank you.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We'll get to those coming up next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Welcome back to the warm-up. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Want to remind you about Seize the Deal. It's another week for Seize the Deal. This week's great deal, Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. You can get a $25 gift ticket for just $12.50 starting this Friday at seizethedeal.com. Listen to this food. Mahi tacos, hangover burger, bone-in chops, or seared scallops. If you're not hungry just by those names, I can't help you, man. This food sounds great. Rife Bar and Restaurant in Atlantic City. This week, Seize the Deal offer. You get a $25 instant voucher for the Rife Restaurant and Bar in Atlantic City, which is $12.50 this Friday morning. For more information, go to the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Before we get to the text, I did want to follow up on what Adam said. And he apologized. He was apologizing for being pessimistic, and I told him, look, I appreciate his candor. I don't think he's being pessimistic as much as he's speaking his view on the situation with what's going on in the world of sports. I personally think that the sport that's in the most trouble personally is baseball. And the reason I say that is because I feel the more as time goes by, I know I've said this a couple times, baseball was more concerned about money than they were about how they were actually going to make any of this work. And I'm much less surprised by the baseball players opting out than I am about the other sports, because baseball is not a bubble environment. Baseball does not have anything fully worked out or figured out. I mean, Toronto Blue Jays, hello? I mean, that situation's a mess in and of itself. To me, I try to be a realist, and I think the reason why the NBA and the NHL will work because it's a bubble environment. I think baseball won't work because I think they were more concerned about millions of dollars than they were about the logistics and people's health and safety. So that's how I look at it. And listen, if you want to say that Adam is a pessimist, that's fine. I think, Adam Kilgore came on here and gave his opinion. I think that, as someone who covers the sport and has been writing about this for months, like a lot of us have been watching it now, we all have a little different perspective on it. I think that we have to have these conversations, though, because at the end of the day, this is part of the sports story. This is part of the sports landscape. And listen, I'm passionate and I love sports, but I can't ignore the reality going on around us that, there are 21 states that had spikes in the last couple of weeks in positive tests. And in the states that haven't had the spikes, the situation has been handled completely differently by the people in the state and by the people who are, let's be realistic, who are making the decisions in the government. So for sports are going to be a reflection of society. And the sports that are most responsible have the best chance of making it work. And the sports that care about the things that are not important are the sports that I think that are going to fail. I think baseball has proven time and time again how tone deaf they are. And I think that's a big reason why I don't have a lot of faith in baseball making this work. I think the NBA gives more of a darn about people's health and safety, and the NHL does as well, than baseball does. I think baseball is too important to find out who's right. And being, I'm right, you're wrong, I know more than you, I understand what's best for the sport. Listen, man, we're all in a bad situation here. If your ego is too important for you to do the right thing, then you are doomed to fail altogether.